So hello everyone, in this video we'll be understanding about JavaScript objects. So actually we have already learned about objects data type. Let's deeply understand this. What is object? JavaScript is an object based language, and in JavaScript almost everything is an object or acts like an object. So to work with JavaScript effectively and efficiently, we need to understand how objects work as well as how to create your own objects and use them. A JavaScript object is just a collection of named values, which we call properties. These named values are usually referred to as properties of the objects. So let's understand how we can create objects. An object can be created with curly brackets. So we have seen the syntax earlier and we have already created some objects in the previous videos that we are actually revising. So we can create an object with this curly bracket. So inside that we specify some key value pairs where the key or the property name is always a string. It should always be a string and we should always wrap it in a double quote or in single quote because that's string and value or property value. Then we also have that property is value. And the value can be of any data type like strings, numbers, booleans, or complex data type like arrays, functions, and other objects. Additionally, properties with functions as their values are often called methods. If we assign a property the function, or if we assign a value as a function, so that property is called methods, not the normal property. So this is used to distinguish between distinguish them from the other properties. A typical JavaScript object may look like this. You can see that this is an object. So this is a person object. We have different properties. The name and the name has a property value Peter, which is a string. We also have this age property, which is having this value, numerical value. We also have this gender, which is having the string again. The value is set to string. Then we also have this property or the method we'll be specifying because now this property is having the value of a function. This way you can actually assign the function as a value to this property. Now we can easily use this method or this display name method in this person object to access this function. So the above example creates an object called person that has three properties, name, age, and gender, and one method display name. We can access it by using person.displayName. So this is actually the case. This is the easiest and preferred way to create a new object in JavaScript, which is known as object literal syntax. To access or get the value of a property, you can use a dot or square bracket notation. So we can use a dot or square bracket notation to get the value from a object. So basically you can see that in this case we are getting the value of this author property, book.author. Then we'll be getting this JK Rowling as a value. We can also use a square bracket notation to get the property value. You can see here in this case we're getting the year, so the year will be returned to us. So this way you can also use double quotes. If you have a double quote, then you cannot use dot notation. Basically if you have more than one word of property name, you can see we have this property name which is publication date, which consists of a space, and at that time we have to wrap that property name inside a double quote or a single quote because that's necessary. And we cannot use dot notation at that time. We have to use the square bracket notation if we have a property with more than one word. We can also access the property with the key. You can say in this example we are getting the key from the user. We'll be doing that practically. So from the user we are getting the key or the property name, and then we are accessing that property. So this way we can also get the property name from the user, and that we have already seen in the last video that how we can actually iterate over the properties by using for in loop. So we learned about the for in loop that is used to access objects properties. So similarly, you can set the new properties or update the existing one using the dot or a bracket notation. So we can also update the property values. Like you can see that in this case, we are updating the country, or we are setting a new property in here in this person object, which is person dot country, and we are assigning the new value to it, which is this United States. We can also use square bracket for assigning a new property which isn't there available. Now you can see we are using this way. We can also update existing properties, just like here we are updating person.age with the updated value 3 or 30. Earlier it was 28. Similarly with this square bracket notation. To delete an object's property, we use this delete operator, and then we specify the property name person dot and the property name or the method name that we want to delete. So this delete will actually delete this property name from the object. And for calling an object's method, we'll be using this the same thing, but if it is a method, then we have to specify this parentheses. If it is a property name, just we don't specify the parentheses. And if it is a function or a method, then we have to use this bracket. Now you can see display name is a method, and now we are accessing that method by using this person dot display name and bracket. If you're using a square bracket notation, then you have to specify the name in square bracket, and after that you can specify or execute that function or method by adding this parentheses after the square bracket. So what is manipulation by value or reference? So this means that when you have a variable, let's say this normal variable, this is a normal variable or string value or a normal data type in which we have assigned a string hello world. If you make a copy of this variable in greet, and if we update the greet variable to this hi there, so this will not reflect the result in the message. So message and greet is now a separate variable. If you update this greet variable, so it will not affect the message variable because they're having their different values. So this is called value or manipulating by value. Generally our normal or primitive data types like strings and numbers are assigned a copy when we assign a variable to assign a variable that to some other variable that creates a copy of that variable to uh, other properties or other variables. But if you use object instead of this, let's say if you use this object person, and if you make a copy to user now, if I update user dot name in this object, so it will update the property in the person object as well. So now they are getting their value by their reference. So this is called manipulating by reference. So when we make a copy of objects, so they are copied as value as reference, so they share a same address, and then we create a copy or a pointer denoting that address, and then if we change any of the property or from the any of the variable, then that other variable will also be affected. But in the earlier case it was not the case. So let me just refresh it. uh, you can see that it is not affected now. So you can clearly see any changes made to the variable user also change the person variable. It happens because both variables reference the same object. So simply copying the object does not actually clone it, but copies the reference to that object. So if we change uh, any of the person or a user object, then both will be affected. But when we use normal primitive data types like strings or numbers, if we change one of them, the other will not be affected. So that is the case. They are sharing the value or copying the value in others, but they're sharing the same reference or the same address of the same object. So that's why this is manipulation by reference. So you have to remember this thing when you're working with objects. So this is the end of the slide. I hope you got something. In the next video, we'll be understanding objects uh, more detailed manner in practical way. So let's meet in the another one. Thank you for watching.